Hello everyone. This video is meant to be a little bit different than some of the other ones that have been created so far and put on our support groups. What I'm going to try to do right now is kind of fumble around without a script or anything else like that and just challenge myself. If I was in a classroom right now under the current situation with our living at home model, how would I personally use the Edsby platform with my students? So it may look quite different from what some of you are doing. Some of you may look at some of the things that I model and say, okay, I've seen those, I've tried them. Again, it may or may not work. It's by no means meant to be system ADSB messaging right now. I'm going to use that messaging for some of my decisions, but again, what I'm about to go through is just my own personal thinking. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into my homeroom. And everything that I'm going to try and do within Edsby right now is based on a couple of key points. Number one, I'm looking to give my students access to content. So for the K-8 model, and again, I should have mentioned that at the outset, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is meant for an elementary K-8 model. Understanding that in the primary division, it is going to look a little bit different, especially within Edsby online content, than what it could for the junior intermediate division. So I'm going to take a look here and I'm thinking, what is the easiest way to use Edsby to provide the ADSB learning at home content that's already been developed for us? So for me, the easiest thing to do is use my library. So I'm going to use my library, and every week I'm going to upload the content that has been provided by ADSB. So if I click into library, I could come up here and simply upload the PDF that I get each and every week. And it's basically as simple as that as far as uploading the content. So if I'm using my homeroom library, every week I can make sure that parents and students, if they are in Edsby, have access to the ADSB learning program for each grade level. I have to decide how am I going to use my class feed. So for me, personally right now, at the very start of this, I would probably want to keep my class feed closed and not open it up for students to reply or comment. Now, I know that that's something that might get your attention because I know for certain that some teachers are doing it differently than that. And that's fine. I may choose to change my opinion on that, or I might decide to do differently throughout. But to begin with, I'm kind of leaning towards using my class feed just as a communication platform. I have a sample post right here. I'm using my first post in the feed to basically set the tone and let students and parents know what I'm going to be using Edsby for during this learning at home period. Each and every day I might take a suggested activity from the learning at home program, and I might put one language and math activity in the feed, or I might actually decide to not do that. I'm still kind of playing around with this and asking myself what I would do. But for now, I'm kind of leaning towards using the feed just as my own communication platform and not opening it up to the students. I also have to consider, it's one thing to give students access to content, but how am I going to use Edsby as a platform to allow students to contribute their thoughts, their thinking based on that comment, because I need to facilitate the learning conversations around that. I'm not looking to create tasks with deadlines, asking students to submit by a certain period. I'm not looking to mark any of this. Everything that I'm using is assessment for learning or as learning. I'm interested in formative assessment, not summative. So I'm not looking to mark anything. And again, this isn't just my own thinking. I'm following the board's continuity of learning plan by doing this. So in Edsby, what is the easiest way for me to possibly have students submit their thinking to me if they choose, so that I am able to connect and facilitate those learning conversations? What I would do, and I know that there's been a video that was published within the last week that walks through the steps for this, but I would use the evidence and I would create learning stories. So if I go into evidence right now and I click into the learning story, that's the easiest way for me to access my student learning stories. I'm using Mitch Chambers as my main example here in my demo site for this. And you can see that I have some sample activities already here for Mitch that have been listed for the class. So I would take those activities from the ADSB learning plan and each and every week I would create one learning story. So for each student, they have one learning story a week, and what I would probably do is have the students, if they choose to share, come in and share their thinking with me through that learning story each and every week. And it would just build. So for example, you can see right here for the one that I have on the screen with Mitch Chambers, he has come in and he has taken a picture and he has uploaded his Monday math, again based on the Edsby learning activity which has been provided. There's a highlighted one underneath. That shows me that this is new content that Mitch has submitted to me. And that's really important because the Edsby notifications are not very powerful with the learning story. We've been told that they will be improved at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, you have to go into each and every learning story and see if new content has been provided. And at least you can tell in this case, yes, there is something that I haven't seen. So the learning story is the way that I would provide students with an opportunity to share their thinking with me. I can come in at this point as the teacher. I can respond back to Mitch. I can type in my response. I can insert a document. At some point when Edsby gets the video fixed, I might even be able to include a video with this and then share it. So that's facilitating that conversation back and forth with my student. This is an example of how to do that in a closed environment where it's just between the student and the teacher. There may be a time where the teacher is interested in having more of an open space environment where the students can share their thinking with one another. That's where you might want to consider opening up your class feed and allowing students to contribute. Your class feed then becomes an open environment where students can respond to your posts, but they can also create their own. And as long as you know what you're getting into, if you do that, it's basically a commitment to stay on top of it because it can really get away from you in a hurry. The other option for that is within the content. You can come in here and you can create a discussion. So if I go into edit and click the plus sign, I could come down here and open up a discussion. This will work in an open space environment again, just like the class feed, if I have my class settings set to students can contribute within the class feed. What I can do then is have a conversation, and you can see my example here. I used voting should be mandatory as my prompt, and I have a number of students who have come in here and started to share their thinking and comment on each other's posts. So again, there are a couple options. Do you want it to be one-on-one conversation, communication back and forth, just the teacher and the student, or do you want it opened up into a more open space? So for me, again, just to summarize, I would bring the content in. I would use my library. I would use my homeroom for everything, by the way. I would keep my class feed closed, at least to start with, and if I needed more of an open space personally, I would prefer to use the discussion feature within content. I hope that helps. There are a lot of other parts of the Edsby platform here that I have not touched upon, and that is intentional. Some of you, I understand, I know that you have used Gradebook throughout the year. You are comfortable with it. Your students have been using it. That's a whole different story. At this time and place right now, if I'm coming into this, especially if I'm coming into it new, and my students have not been exposed to the platform a great deal, I would probably want to steer clear of Gradebook. And again, just keeping in mind with the current board philosophy right now, with our continuity of learning plan, my role right now is to provide access to content and facilitate conversations around that content. Hopefully this helps. Enjoy the video.